Hello, everyone. This is Mark Blanton from the Real South Africa, and I'm glad all you guys have been following us, asking questions about coming to South Africa. And obviously, a lot of the questions were surrounding purchasing a home here in sunny South Africa. So what we decided to do for you guys is to go ahead and come to one of the largest, if not the largest, real estate firm here in South Africa called Pam Golding. You should actually look her up. She has an amazing story, how she started her firm and how it all got to be one of the biggest firms here in South Africa. Also, since I don't have the answers to all the questions, even though you probably think I do, I brought in a professional to talk about all the ways that we can finance homes, how you can purchase homes, and some of the processes and on how it works and so forth. Of course, if you have questions, there's her information at the bottom of the in the description, and you can send her an email if you have any specific questions related to financing homes. Then at that point, you can start a dialogue, and hopefully we can get you here in sunny South Africa. So I'm gonna pass the baton to
Christine. Hello, everybody. I work for a company called Uber Home Loans Comparison Service. We are the biggest mortgage origination company in South Africa. I've been working with them for 5 years, and I do residential home loan financing. So I work with a lot of purchasers who are foreigners that are looking to buy in South Africa, and hopefully I can assist with some of your questions when you look to purchase here.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I guess the first thing, for most people, in the U.S., they're bought homes, so they understand the mortgage process. So here, the terminology is a little different. However, I think it's the same game. So primarily, how does it work for someone who is not from South Africa, but maybe be here on a resident visa or something to that effect? How does it generally work? And then we get into the weeds. Sure.
Yeah. So the banks are happy to loan to foreigners that are out here on a work permit. For example, if you work in here, you have a valid work permit, which is really important. However, you're working off a passport. The banks do generally grant loans to the value of 50%. They do have a criteria linking to that. So documentation relating to work permits, employment contracts, bank statements. If you are working in South Africa, your salary should be deposited into a local bank account.
Sure.
And we find that where that relationship is with that specific bank, those banks are very happy to loan a 50% bond because that relationship is there. So they've got a little bit of history on who you are and your conduct of accounts, which is always very important with the banks.
Okay. Now, another question that I have, there are homes, people want to, build homes, buy land, obviously, in the municipalities. And then, of course, there's existing homes that people can purchase. Is it easier to get into an existing home, or is it easier to get into to build a home and have it financed that way?
So if you are looking at purchasing a home directly from a developer, that is probably a lot easier in the sense of working with the developer. However, the banks do, if it's an existing home that the developer has already built and you're purchasing that home, that is quite easy. Okay. You have the plus side where you don't have transfer costs and transfer duty that you have to pay.
Okay.
Because you're buying directly from a developer. Generally, we do find that foreigners purchasing in South Africa purchase existing residential homes. Okay, that is also a 50% bond that the banks will consider. However, if you purchase a piece of vacant land and you want to build on that, that is a very different story, and the banks generally don't grant bonds for foreigners for building loans. So you've purchased the vacant land and you need to raise another 3 million rand. There are very specific criteria relating to that with regards to building plans, NHBRC certificates, specifications that the banks require. However, as foreigners, the banks are not willing to assist you there. A lot of the banks. So it is probably better to buy that existing property from the developer where it's already built.
Yeah, and a lot of times you can actually, if they're building the property, or like you said, you're buying from a developer. It's well known who they are, and you can go in and make the adjustments that you want to the home, get certain things built on the home. So it's not like you're buying a cookie cutter home like we do in the U.S. You get 5 options, and this is the one you get, and so forth. And when she talks about bonds, I know you're probably like, what is she talking about? We're talking about a mortgage. That's the same terminology.
That's correct.
And so forth. And then there was one other term that you used, but that we'll get back to. So, okay. So there is an option to purchase homes here in South Africa. Obviously, one of the big questions I'm sure you're having up front is how do I open up a banking account here in South Africa? And like she said, she mentioned one type of permit called a work permit, but there's which is a temporary residency in some regards. There's several different temporary residencies that you can get outside of the work permit, which would allow you to walk into a bank, open up a bank account, and then at this point now you're purchasing a home.
At this point, you're purchasing a home.
You're
yes.
purchasing a home and whatnot.
So, what was your question? Sorry.
The difference between like purchasing a home that was
as a foreigner with a temporary residence.
With temporary residence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're a foreigner and you've come out to South Africa and you've seen a beautiful home that you want to buy, but you live abroad. You don't live in South Africa, you don't have any banking relationship in South Africa, and you don't have any ties other than you really want to buy here. The most important criteria for that is you have to be fully employed outside the borders of South Africa. The banks won't consider any client who is self-employed outside the borders of South Africa for home loan financing. Okay, so that's vital. If you're fully employed and you work for a nice company, the bank requirements, and you don't have a bank account in South Africa, that's also fine. We can still apply to banks for the client. However, the documentation would be pretty much similar to what you would probably require when you apply for a bond outside the borders. They would need a bank statement, verified bank statements, 6 months pay slips, an employment contract, passports. The banks would also like to see what your expenses are, your living monthly expenses. Do you actually have a mortgage bond abroad? So they will then make an informed decision as much as is possible.
Exactly.
If you have a bank account in South Africa, and I do urge people that are looking at purchasing to open a bank account and deposit some funds continuously into the bank account, it definitely does strengthen an application, simply because of the relationship. The banks can get an idea of who you are. It is a foreign bank account that you would be opening, with whichever bank. There are certain commercial banks that are open to that. You would have to provide them with certain information, though, to open that bank account.
Okay. So another question that will probably come up is credit. And it may not be relevant to this conversation, but how does, if somebody's looking at trying to purchase a home in the U.S., everybody's, we're concerned about our credit scores. Do those things transfer over here as far as your credit scores are concerned?
No, they don't, as a foreigner, and that's a very big issue. That is why the banks are happy to take on 50% of the liability and want the clients to pay 50% deposit. Your credit score, everything in South Africa as abroad relates to your credit score. So it's very important. However, because you are a foreigner, we don't have access to that information. So the banks, that is why your international bank statements, your pay slips, your employment contract, and who you actually work with is so important to the banks to make that decision.
Okay. Now, when you talk about earlier you said we were having a conversation about a 3 million rand bond. Here, that's a pretty significant home here in South Africa.
Yes, it is.
And then when you do the conversion of divided by roughly 17, you'll find out exactly how or how much that is, and you might still want to consider purchasing a home here in South Africa, because I think the like if you get a nice townhouse or some of the locations, you can do pretty well for yourself.
Absolutely, with that a 3 million rand home,
Yeah.
if you convert and with a 50% deposit, it's definitely worthwhile considering. The only criteria there would be is the banks would insist on the deposit being bought through the Reserve Bank.
Yeah.
That is just their main criteria, and obviously from where the funds originated.
Yeah, that's basically doing a wire transfer. Anytime you do a wire transfer from the U.S., it goes through the Reserve Bank through New York, and then it goes directly into either your account here or to the conveyancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what we ultimately ended up doing.
Yeah, that's it. Generally, it would go into your account if you do have one here, but normally directly into a conveyancer's attorney's account until registration of transfer is effected.
Okay. And all the stuff she's basically saying, the conveyancer, all the paperwork that needs to be done, the registration is equivalent to our closing. When you are in the U.S. and you buy a home, you sit down and all your documents are there and so forth. You sign everything, and that's your closing, and that's when everything transfers from one person to you. So that those are different terms, but it's basically, again, it's all the same. Now, another question that I think I need to ask is like alternate types of financing, some exotic ways of getting things done for those who are looking at saying, I got to get that house. I want to live in Blue Valley, beside me. And so, what are some exotic ways of getting things done here in South Africa?
So yes, there are certain creative ways of getting additional financing. The bank's commercial bank criteria is really strict. However, if you really want that property, and you are limited with being able to obtain a bond here in South Africa, the other way is possibly doing financing abroad on one of your existing homes, almost like collateral lending. The banks don't consider collateral lending here in South Africa, but you would have to raise financing on a property outside the borders of South Africa, get that registered, bring the money, and then bring it through the normal legal channels.
Yeah.
That is the only other way you would be able to purchase the property locally then.
Yes. So it's good that especially if you're coming from the U.S., because we all know if you own a home, there's all kind of ways to get lending that way. The good part about it is you can actually get the money, like I said, bring it through the legal process, which is through the Federal Reserve System via a wire transfer, which they're very inexpensive, and then you can take that money and put that on your home here. Also, too, which will be explained to you, it's not like you're really losing the money. You actually get the home, and in some ways, when you are buying in a nicer area, the returns on that could be pretty substantial.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we do find a lot of our clients rent out their properties after taking transfer. And that rental income is deposited into a South African bank account. If the property has not been bonded and they've had to purchase it cash, there is an opportunity at a later stage to potentially raise a mortgage bond on that actual existing property using part of the rental income.
So basically, some of the monies that you would have received from the U.S., you bring it here, and then you can actually capitalize on it. Still on the property. You can come visit it anytime you want, and so forth. Yeah. And I think there are several companies that help you find renters and things along that line. And I think I forgot what we call them in the States, but basically you can get it done.
That's 100% right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other exotic or challenging ways to raise capital for your home?
So the banks don't like always placing full reliance on rental income. However, there is one of the commercial banks. They do have a form of lending that if you own more than 2-3 properties, they will look at using those finances, that rental income towards financing a new property for you for sole benefit of rental income. Okay, so that is pretty much the only other exotic way that the commercial banks will currently consider for home loan financing.
So are you finding a lot of people over the last, say, 2 or 3 years coming from outside the country purchasing property?
Yes, huge amount of clients coming in. We have such a beautiful climate. Our properties are beautiful.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, purchasing here in South Africa, when you only need to pay 50% deposit, you've got a holiday for life. Really?
Yes. Yeah.
That return is still there in the market for us. And to be honest with you, at the moment, the property prices are so competitive right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great opportunity to actually purchase here.
Okay. Now, a big question that I know that's going to come up. So, do you act? So, once you, let's say you went and you put the 50% down, or you purchased the home outright using some of the other ways of being able to finance the home. Do you actually own the home? Is it yours?
Well, the bank owned 50%.
Yeah,
But yes.
but
So
once you paid it off.
So once you've paid it off, what you would have to do is there is a bond that is registered and a title deed that is registered in your name. Once you've paid that 50% bond off, you make an application to the banks to actually cancel the existing bond.
Mm-hmm.
So what it effectively does is the banks will then cancel the endorsement on the title deed, saying that you owe one of the commercial banks, I don't know, 2 million rand, for example.
Okay.
And that title deed then becomes yours, and you are the outright owner of that property.
So it has nothing to do with the country's laws or anything like that.
No.
The home is yours. You get to do with the land, and the home is yours.
Yes, the home and the land is yours. Unless you purchase sectional title, which is you get residential, full residential, which is a house freestanding, or you have a sectional title, which you are in a complex.
Yep.
In that event, you don't actually own the land; you only own the building.
Mm-hmm.
But that is it still falls under residential mortgage home loan.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. The reason why I say that because a lot of people we get a lot of calls, and people want to move to Ghana and other places, and in some ways they can't actually own the property itself because of the laws of the land.
Okay. Like a 99-year leasehold.
Yeah.
No, we don't have that here. You actually own that property outright.
So there's no 99 leasehold here?
I think in certain instances there are very, very few. In many years ago they used to have 99-year leaseholds, but they did away with that.
Okay.
I think in very, very few instances there are 99-year leaseholds.
Okay. And so you would say that South Africa's banking systems and mortgage system is pretty modern across the board. It's pretty stable.
Very stable. The banks are loaning. The banks want to give you money. They obviously want you to pay their money back. That's how the banks make their money, is the interest. But yes, the banks are very consistent.
Okay.
Very consistent.
Now, I'm going to ask you a hard question. The difference between purchasing in a municipality and maybe purchasing out in the village. Is it different? Like when you're out in the rural areas, is it different?
Yes, it is. Well, the banks have got to find value. So the main issue, a bank will grant you an approval in principle subject to property valuation.
Okay.
And a bank valuation will go out and they will actually assess the property. So for example, let's say you purchased for 50%, and you've purchased in the rural area, the bank will want to go out and ensure that there is value to the actual purchase price, not to the bond amount, to the actual purchase price of the property. Okay. So it does happen sometimes where the banks come back and say, you've purchased a property for 3 million. We don't find value to the value of 3 million. We find value to 2.5 million only. But that is then a discussion that we get involved with the estate agent, and the estate agent then has to deal with the purchaser. We obviously find out the reason why they've come back with a lower offer.
Okay.
Also, land size makes a very big difference to home loan lending. Any property 23 hectares and higher, the residential home loan financing falls away. It falls under a different spectrum, basically commercial lending. Okay. So, and I won't be able to assist in that instance.
But you know somebody.
I can certainly guide you towards the right person then, yes.
Well, that's pretty significant because I think 23 hectares is roughly in the U.S. 46 acres.
Yeah.
So unless you're buying like a 46 acre property, there's no need to concern, and we can consistently and constantly work with regular banking and so forth. Do you think there's anything else that we probably need to cover in reference to people who are foreigners outside the United States who have employment, who are interested in coming to South Africa? What do you think is the easiest way for them to purchase a property? Would you say just go to a developer?
I would definitely say you need to get involved with an estate agent.
Okay.
A reputable estate agent that will be able to work with you. Pam Golding particularly is involved in the international market, and they are renowned with working with those international clients. But you definitely need an agent because you need to give them an idea of what you're looking for a home. Are you looking at estate living within a development, or are you looking for just a little townhouse? And they'll be able to guide you that way. That's actually vital.
Yes.
To be honest with you, when you purchase a home. Thereafter, what I do, they bring me on board, the estate agents, and I generally engage with the purchasers going forward, just to give them an idea of what the requirements are. And, you know, there are 1,001 questions that you generally do ask when you're purchasing and you're going to invest that kind of money in this country. That and I'm just generally, anything I don't know, I've got a wealth of knowledge within the Uber company I work for who can assist with answering those questions.
Okay. A good, and she made a good point. Like I said, you know, a lot of people, you know, we get calls and questions in reference to, you know, where to live, where to go. And like I said, there's a plethora of options here, especially here in South Africa. There's just too many, and to find one house that looks like another house is kind of difficult because most people build their homes and then and so forth. So, and I guess one of the questions that I think that we should ask is when it's time for resale. Here we are. We're, you know what? I've had enough sun. I've had enough brides. And I've spent enough time in Santa City, and I'm looking at selling my home. What's the process for that?
Definitely to engage with an estate agent because they'll give you a very good idea of what your resale value would be based on existing properties around and on the history of the area. Generally, your estate agent will work with you to try and get you the best price.
Okay.
So work with an estate agent to sell that property, but there again, you need to engage directly with an estate agent for that. Okay.
The reason why I said that is because we're ultimately going to bring in somebody who's a state agent and an agent here and can kind of give us the overall view of properties here in South Africa. And it's pretty clear that they're robust in their financing. Obviously, you know, I believe personally that they bend over backwards simply because, you know, you are a foreigner, your credit doesn't translate over here, but they do have pathways and avenues for you to purchase a home here in South Africa because they know the types of properties they have. They know, you know, the people want to come here. It's a very highly sought after location, especially out on the coast, the Western Capes, the Eastern Capes. Yeah, so there you go.
Hugely.
Yeah, and especially in because we've noticed there's a lot of interest in KZN, a lot of interest in KZN.
A lot of development going on there at the moment as well.
Yeah. Even though it's a downturn in the world markets here in South Africa, like I said, even though, you know, they have their challenges, things are coming up. So, do you have anything else you want to add to the mix here?
Yes, whenever you do purchase in South Africa, it's always worthwhile working with an origination company for a number of reasons. Probably the most important one is we spread the load to all the banks because every bank has a different risk appetite at any specific time. And also, you know, you want to get the most competitive interest rate that you can get. So we generally take one interest rate to another bank and fight them for the best rate to give you a great opportunity to purchase in the country. So, and because we have strong relationships with the banks, if the bank raise a note or raise a concern, I can at least relate that to the client and ask for motivation with what the bank has raised. We can go back and hopefully get you your bonds granted. So that's really what we do, and it's worthwhile working with an origination company.
And that's why we're here. But like I said, that's all we have. So what I'm going to, for this segment, obviously we're going to do another segment shortly, and just stay tuned. But like I said, I think this was well worthwhile. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always send us an email at info@therealsouthafrica.com. And then, of course, get you in contact with the origination company or someone who can assist you in your query. I've been here so long, I say query now. I don't know, but your question and so forth. So I will chat with you later.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for following us here at Pam Golden Realty. Like I said, one of the largest real estate companies here in South Africa. Enjoy the information that we're giving you. And if you got any questions, please reach out to us and we can make sure that your transition or your time here in South Africa is perfect. And in the meanwhile, take care.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. If you like what you saw, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the notifications button so you don't miss out on all things The Real South Africa. Thanks again.